Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Welcome to episode 290 of the show. I am your humble host, Jason A. Meiske, and I'm really looking forward to introducing you to today's guest. It's William J. Donahue. We have a fantastic conversation, and I think you're going to really enjoy this. Coming ahead, we are talking about his inspiration and influences, what got him going as a horror writer, his character studies that go into each of his books. We're talking about allowing the story to come out naturally, how love is the ultimate emotion, and why love matters in horror. You're going to find out what a hat man is, and we didn't get to discuss it during the episode, but he and I chatted about it afterwards. But he has a podcast as well that's fairly new, and I've been able to go back and listen to a few episodes. It's fantastic, and it's called Taming Monsters with Dirty Rotten Bill. It's a great name, and it's a lot of fun. Like I said, I got to check out a few episodes, and yeah, he's got some really good guests and has some really good questions of himself. So I'm going to make sure and have links for all of that down below so you can check those things out for yourself. It was a lot of fun talking to William, and I think you're going to find yourself, especially here with the holiday season, with his brand new book that's just now available, Find Your Way Back to Me, which is an amazing premise. The story itself is just incredible. So yeah, for the spooky season, I think this is something that you got to give a try and check it out. Well, I think without further ado, we'll just go ahead and jump right on in. So let's get to that interview with William J. Donahue. Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Welcome back. Hey, this week we are heading out to the East Coast to talk to a literary horror author in honor of Halloween. And his latest book just came out yesterday. I am very thrilled to, pardon me. I'm very thrilled to introduce you to William J. Donahue. He lives in a small but well-guarded fortress somewhere on the map between Philadelphia and Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. When he's not writing fiction, entertaining his cats, or wandering quietly in the woods, he works as a magazine editor and feature writer. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the show, William J. Donahue.
Jason, great to be on. Thank you so much.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I'm so happy to have you here. And yeah, man, let's dive in. So literary horror. What got you down that road? I saw one of your other bios. You said you've never been the same since you watched, was it The Thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we all have those movies or books or whatever that we saw that just scarred us forever and put us down a certain path. And The Thing or Poltergeist or even like Michael Jackson's Thriller video, those things are the
gosh,
so as good. A kid. Oh yeah, that stuff really hooked me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember. It's funny. I was just listening to another podcast talking about the classic 1970s era King Kong, and I've got all these memories going through my mind. I remember seeing that in theaters. My mom was not really good about knowing the ratings, and her parents ran that theater, and they didn't say anything either. So 5-year-old me and my little brother would go in there with her to watch that, and I mean, we are loving it when he's fighting the giant snake. And I mean, we're just like, oh my gosh. And my mom's trying to cover our eyes. And we were like, what are you doing? No, 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 no. And I think that was when I got hooked on monsters.
It's so funny. Like I actually had this conversation with another writer the other day. Just for me, it was the first thing, it was my safe introduction to horror. Like I would watch Creature Double Feature on Saturdays with my father. And the two that I remember most were Creature from the Black Lagoon and then Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. And those were like safe horror and like a really nice entryway. But getting into like the deeper stuff, something like The Thing or Poltergeist, things that were really genuinely scary, even a little bit gory in some spots. Maybe it's something I shouldn't have been watching at 10 years old, but I have no complaints at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So now where do you get some of your ideas? Is it just kind of seeing the world from a different point of view and questioning it, or is it dreams? Where do you think? Where do you find most of that inspiration?
To be honest with you, most of my books start out as kind of character studies. So first, I find a character that I like, someone I want to know about, and I try to kind of meet people that I don't know very well. So, for example, my first book, Burn Beautiful Soul, the main character was kind of an ancient demon from long ago, and I don't know too anything about those. Then I did a at one point. I know something about this one, but it was a middle-aged man who was kind of destroyed his life in some ways. And I focused a book on a 29-year-old mortician's apprentice. And then with the most recent book, the characters I really wanted to know about were older adults and just how things like aging and illness would affect your life and your relationship and everything else. So for me, it all starts with character, and I'll start a story somewhere, and then all of a sudden I'll just take a turn. So for my last book, Only Monsters Remain, that was originally supposed to be a story about the characters you might meet in a funeral home, and all of a sudden it took this really weird cosmic horror turn. I have no idea where that came from. And then for my new one, Find Your Way Back to Me, that was really again looking at it was kind of a study in aging and illness among older folks, and then somehow that took this really weird supernatural turn. So they start out somewhere else, and then I don't know. I have no idea how they turn, but sometimes the story just leads you there, I think.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's awesome. And it sounds like the way you're describing it sounds like you're kind of exploring the story and letting it guide you, and maybe you don't know how it's going to end.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like sometimes I'd be curious to hear about you and how you approach your stories, but sometimes I'll have the end in mind, but I have no idea how I'm going to get there.
Mm,
But really, it starts with the character, and then we'll see what happens along the way. Um, I try not to be too like pretentious about it or anything because there is a certain magic to it in terms of like it just sometimes happens, but sometimes it's just luck, and sometimes it's bad luck because sometimes it just doesn't work.
hmm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think like for me with my first book, I think trying to force it is what took me so long. Like I worked on it off and on for 8 years, and it wasn't until the last like 2 years that I really started making progress. And I started just kind of letting go and just like, all right, I know what the story is. Let me just start going and see if I'm going to get to the ending that I have in mind. And it worked. And it just like, oh wow, the characters are doing things and that I didn't really expect. And oh, I was able to work this other idea in that I had kind of in the back of my mind. And I didn't know if it was going to get there, but somehow it's like the characters somewhere in the back of our minds know how to make that connection that we don't know in our present mind. And I can't explain it. I try to explain to my wife sometimes, like, I don't know how I got there, but it's such a cool feeling when it works. All of a sudden, just that light comes on. You're like, oh, that's it.
I love when that happens. And it's funny, I have a poet friend, and she talks a lot about the importance of quiet spaces and quiet places and things where you can go and just kind of let your mind wander. And I see the value in that too. Like every morning, I'll walk my dog in a park, and usually we're out there for like 40 minutes to an hour. And that's good time to think about just like life problems and stuff like that, but also think about the problems in your work. And it's funny when you let your mind go and you're not really thinking about it, it just kind of takes you somewhere. And like you said, sometimes one of those little nuggets will just pop in and it fits right in the place and everything else falls in place around it. And it's just wonderful when that happens because in a large part, like you had nothing to do with it. It's just your mind or whatever, just making that magic.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And it's funny because like I've noticed like in this past year, I've been staying very busy. And it's funny because or what I've discovered is I'm staying really busy. So I'm trying to keep up on like other podcasts and listening to audiobooks and always doing something. And then whenever I sit down and I'm writing, I'm kind of struggling with where I'm going with it. And like I kind of hit a roadblock, and I'm just kind of, I don't know, I go back and I'll read the chapter again.
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember now where I'm going. But it just started occurring to me recently, like, I think what's going on is I'm staying so busy and I'm trying to concentrate on, oh, I got to catch up on listening to this or doing that, and not allowing myself that free time in my mind. Whereas I used to go for a walk and not have a headset on, or I would work out and it would just be music. But now I'm working out and I've got a podcast or something I'm listening to. My mind is sticking to that. And so this past week, I've made a conscious effort to get away from that. Like, no, let's just put my music on, or something else in the background. And my mind is starting to buzz again with getting back into the story, and like trying not to think about it or force it, just letting it come out naturally. And it seems to be helping. I think we find ourselves staying too busy sometimes to let our minds unlock those mysteries.
Absolutely, just kind of getting out of your own way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, like you suggested there, walking with your dog. I mean, you probably don't want to have a headset on for something like that, so you can pay attention to what the dog's seeing or doing, whatever. See people around coming around as well.
You got it. Yep.
Perfect. Well, so you got the latest book, Find Your Way Back to Me, just came out. As of this recording, it came out yesterday, the 23rd of October. I believe it's your fourth book, and sounds amazing. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you're the same way. Like, your most recent book is the favorite, and that's the case with this one. But I really do love this book. So, as I said earlier, it's about an older couple, and it starts, and it's really, again, it's an exploration of age and illness and grief and love. I love love stories. I know that sounds weird for a horror writer, but I think we all like horror comes off as big and tough and stuff like that, and I get that. But I think in order to really make the reader feel something, you have to care for the characters. And
Hmm.
there's love is the most natural thing in the world. Anyway, so it starts with an older couple named Jody and Martin, and they've kind of absconded to this farmhouse on the edge of Navajo territory in northeastern Arizona. And the farmhouse is kind of falling down. It's a weird place to retire to because they're retirees, but they're not really going to enjoy the peace and quiet. They're there to try and escape something that has been haunting Martin for pretty much all his life. And then something really catastrophic happens, and Jody is kind of left to wonder if this thing they've been trying to escape, if it is caught up to them. So over the course of the book, we get to see how kind of Jody's Martin is out of the picture for a lot of the story, but we learn a lot about Martin and his life and the things that have affected him, good, bad, terrible in some cases. And we really get to see about how their relationship has evolved, but also how this really terrible thing is kind of reshaping both of them, um, kind of breaking them down literally and physically. And of course, there's this otherworldly entity that is all throughout. So it's to me it's a character study of a relationship and the people in it, or relationships, because it's also about the relationships that at least Martin has with this entity, which is that to me was really a fun thing to explore how a human and a non-human can kind of coexist and in some ways help each other, some ways feed off each other. It was a really fun book to write.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. And just to be on the record here, I agree. I think love stories are amazing. My wife and I, enjoy a really good love story. We have a good love story of our own. And yeah, I mean, and I think if you can inject that, even in horror, it raises that level to something more than just, your pulp fiction kind of story, like a throwaway book. You put love into it. Now you got something people are going to remember. So this is cool. And what's greater than, I like how you kind of flipped it around, where it's usually you've got somebody is battling their own, in this case, literally their own demon, but it's the love interest who's going to go and face that demon for them. And that's awesome. And that's really an expression of love. That's
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely. And I think to your point, there's a really big difference between a love story and romance. So this isn't a romance story by any stretch of the imagination, but it is definitely a love story. And love stories are complicated and they're ugly and they're brutal. At least the good ones are. Like I look at actually some of my favorite movies and or books for that matter, and they're about love stories that either go terribly wrong or maybe they get to a point and they just never really get off the ground and they're really painful and heartbreaking. And
Hmm.
I don't know why I love that, but I just absolutely do.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been exploring some of that myself, and I've got a sci-fi series where I've got the main character and his love interest, which I hadn't really, I don't know, it wasn't really something I planned originally, but as I was writing it, I realized, oh, this is going to happen. But I loved doing the moonlighting, will they, won't they, the back and forth, and dragging it out over the first couple of books to see if they're going to. It's like, okay, they're made for each other, but they got a world to save. So lots of things holding them back from finally getting together, and that's been fun to put little things in there for here and there. And I'm going to do this for you, but then you got your own personality issues and stuff like that. And it's been fun to explore that a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds like a blast.
Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely fun, and it's and it allows me to bring my wife in once on to like, all right, what do you think of this? Like, what would you? And she was like, okay, I'd slap a guy who did that. I was like, yeah, okay, but that's, but that works for the story. Like, okay, I mean, I wouldn't do that, but yeah.
That's
So
really
and
cool. I like how you have like my wife is my first reader, and she would say she's not a literary person or stuff like that, but she's great because she can see things like she'll see something that I didn't get wrong, or like you said,
oh yeah,
if someone does something a certain way, so that's been invaluable to have that expertise and that perspective.
yeah, yeah, and she gets worried sometimes that maybe she's giving me something too, I don't know, like she's afraid she sounds too mean. I'm like, no, 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 no. I I'm beyond that. I'm impervious to being hurt by something that you're going to say. I'm interested in, all right, why do you say that? Because that way I can dive into what did I do wrong, or did I do it right, or did I evoke the emotion that I want? And she's great. I love being able to bring it to her.
Jason, I remember one time I was talking to my wife about a story and I told her a character name and she asked me to repeat the name and I did. I repeated it and she's like, "That's dumb. That's a dumb name." And it was great. And she laughed about how how kind of off the cuff it came, but I mean she was right. She was right, and it's just sometimes you need that unvarnished feedback.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Well, speaking of crazy names, all right, you've got it's here in the description, so thankfully we're not spoiling anything. What is this demon? How do you say this demon's name?
The demon's name is Papaduffus, and Papaduffus is basically it's a he's a hat man if you know anything about the hat man in terms of the shadowy figure that appears to people and often presents them with not an ultimatum but an offer, and depending on your response, this hat man may be of great use to you, but is also going to take something from you. I actually talked to one person who was rumored who said that she had an experience with a hat man and she declined its offer, and it still made her life a living hell for a good year or two. And
Mm.
something about that story, something about that legend or depending on your beliefs, maybe possibly a real thing, something about that really terrified me.
Oh
As
yeah.
for the name, I know the name is kind of strange, but it's funny. My first novel, Burn Beautiful Soul, was about demons, and I did a lot of reading about demons and their names, and some of them have just really goofy names. One that I remember is Titty Villas, and Titty Villas, you'll appreciate this. Titty Villas, his or its goal was to introduce errors into the written word. That was like, all demons have their own strengths and minuses and their special powers. That was Titty Villas's his perspective. So yeah, Papadefis is kind of an interesting name, but it just kind of fit for me.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Now, is this a closed story? Or it looks like you do a lot of just kind of like one-offs, and that's the end of it, and then you don't come back to it. But have you considered doing any sequels?
I haven't yet. Yeah, I tend to do one-offs. I know series are the way to go, and I have a lot of respect for writers who do series. Um, just because once I get done with the story, I'm kind of done with the story, and I want to move on to something else. Like I just want to
Yeah.
entertain myself.
Yeah.
So I've had a real struggle thinking about taking this or any other story to a second way or a second iteration.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It's that my first couple books were just standalones. Uh, I have no intentions of going back and doing a sequel at this time for any of them. But the series that I am working on, it's like now that I've got 3 books, I'm 3 books into it. Other than a couple of short stories I've written and published, I'm just kind of like right now. I'm like I'm ready to get back to my full on thriller. Um, Writing a direwolf story right now, just as something to
Hmm.
just to get away from the sci-fi action that I was doing before, write something different, and it's been a lot of fun. But that's the book that right now I'm kind of hitting a wall on right now. So I'm like, all right, let me go into kind of refresh my mind here a little bit and see what I can get back into. But it's definitely good to get away from my world that I've created for a little bit, even though I love that world. And that I think that's what's the main thing is whenever you find yourself in a world that you really enjoy, then you look forward to getting back to it again. But I love having the standalones too, because then that way you can do something different every time.
It seems to be if you're doing a series like a standalone would be a really nice palate cleanser to your point.
Mm-hmm.
I
Exactly.
I interviewed Michael Connolly, the thriller writer, a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and he was awesome. But so I was just asking him about like because he's been writing the same character Bosch for years and years and years, and I asked him about that, and he said I still I forget the exact quote, but it basically was I still find the character interesting. The character still has things to teach me. I thought that was really cool. So maybe that's just
Yeah.
my lack of imagination that I can't, turn something into a series.
Oh, well, that's all right though. I mean, I don't think it's right or wrong either way. It's where you feel like you're going as a writer, and as long as it's working for you, that's all that really matters.
Hmm, good point.
So, all right. Well, this has been so much fun. I do have a final follow up question here for you. Here, I got a would you rather sort of question here.
All right.
Would you rather have to confront the monster that you created in your story, or be forced to write a sequel from the villain's perspective?
I would say I love whenever I write a story, I would go for B, writing from a story from the villain's perspective. Because
Mm,
in each of the books that I write, I try to usually it's from the protagonist's perspective, but I
hmm.
always love to have at least 2 or 3 chapters that are from the antagonist's perspective, just to provide some additional color. I just think that's a blast, and especially villains too. They're so complex and complicated. Like I
Yeah.
remember when I used to watch wrestling, I loved the characters. They were mostly heels, the villains, the bad guys, because
Hmm.
they were much more complex than like these, one-dimensional heroes. So writing from a villain's perspective, that to me that sounds like a treat.
Yeah, it does. It does. And that would give you the option to even add, I don't know, almost a little bit of sympathy or a little bit of angle of this is why they're evil. It's like if you know why they're evil, because they say the good villains are never naturally evil. They believe in what they're doing.
Hmm.
So that would be an option or a way to look at it from that point of view.
That's perfect.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and the wrestling narrative that was perfect because, I mean, where else can you find good guys becoming bad guys becoming good guys, flipping over for years and decades, and that was so cool. I remember growing up with the heyday of that in the '80s.
That was just pure storytelling. It was wonderful back then. Yep,
It
I'm
really
with you.
was. It really was. William, this has been a blast, man. Hey, where can people find and follow you?
Easy enough. My website, wjdonahue.com. Everything for about me is there, all my socials and stuff like that. Just wjdonahue.com.
Outstanding. All right, everybody, and of course, Going to have the links in the show notes, so you don't have to go and type that away or look for it. Just click that link in there. You can find everything about William and his other books. And next week, William will be back with a sample chapter from Find Your Way Back to Me. Until next week, everybody, take care.